Hello. I must warn you about the subject of this video before we start. If you are superstitious, or you believe in things like ghosts, then I suggest you don't watch the rest of this video. And with that being said, let us begin. James Dean was an American actor, whose career was tragically cut short when he died in a car accident at the age of 24. But what if his death wasn't just a tragic accident? What if there is something more sinister going on? A new book written by author and researcher Mike Alexander claims that James Dean's death was actually caused by his own car. But how could a car be responsible for such a thing? Let us find out. In this video, we will explore the legend of James Dean's Porsche 550 Spyder, which is believed to be cursed. We will also examine the evidence for this curse and decide whether it is real or just a myth. James Dean was a Hollywood bad boy who lived fast and died young. He was known for his roles in Rebel Without a Cause and East of Eden. Despite his short time on Earth, became one of the most iconic actors of the 1950s. Dean was obsessed with cars and motorcycles, and he had a number of high-powered machines. However, none were more special than his Porsche 550 Spyder, which he affectionately nicknamed Little Bastard. Unfortunately, Dean would not get to enjoy his purchase for very long.
Wow.
On September 30th, 1955, Dean was driving his Porsche from Los Angeles to San Francisco to meet some friends. He was accompanied by his mechanic, Rolf Wunderlich. For some reason, they decided to take a shortcut through Colami, California, where they collided with another car. Dean and Wunderlich were both killed instantly. Dean's death shocked the world, and it was especially devastating for his family and friends. He couldn't believe that such a talented actor had been taken away so soon. Many people were suspicious about the circumstances surrounding Dean's death. Some believed that the accident was no accident. Instead, they thought that someone had deliberately caused the crash in order to kill him. One of these people was Dean's close friend, Bill Shirley. Shirley was convinced that someone had put a curse on Dean and that this was why he had died. According to Shirley, Dean had a lot of enemies in the Hollywood industry, and this could be why somebody wanted him dead. The most likely suspect was Dean's rival, Nick Adams. However, there was never any concrete evidence that Adams was behind the curse. As the years passed, the legend of the curse only grew. People began to tell stories of how Dean's car was haunted, and that anyone who came into contact with it would die. This may sound far-fetched, but it is important to remember that this is just a legend. There is no hard evidence that any curse was ever placed on Dean or his car. However, there are a few strange coincidences that cannot be ignored. For example, after Dean's death, his car was sold to a man named Dan Armbruster. You guessed it. Dan was killed in a car accident while driving Dean's Porsche. The car was then sold again, and the new owner, a man named Troy McHenry, was also killed in a car accident. To make matters even stranger, McHenry's girlfriend, who was in the passenger seat, survived the crash but was seriously injured. She later died in hospital from her injuries. Coincidences led many people to believe that Dean's car was cursed and that it was responsible for the deaths of everyone who owned it. However, others argued that this was just a case of bad luck. They claimed that there is no such thing as a curse and that all of these deaths could have happened by chance alone. What makes the story even more creepy is that James Dean's car seems to have a mind of its own. For example, there are reports of the car moving on its own without anyone in the driver's seat. In one instance, the car was parked in a garage, and the owner went out for the evening. When he returned home, he found that the garage door had been closed and locked automatically. He tried to open it, but it would not budge. Eventually, he had to call a locksmith to gain entry to his garage. Another strange incident occurred when James Dean's car was being transported from California to New York. The truck that was carrying the car broke down in Arizona, and the driver had to get a tow truck to help him. However, when the tow truck arrived, it found that the car had moved on its own and was blocking the road. The driver had to get out of his vehicle and push James Dean's car off the road before he could continue his journey. If these stories are true, then it is clear that there is something sinister going on. Perhaps James Dean's car really is cursed. Author Mike Alexander believes that the answer lies in the car's history. He says that before Dean purchased the vehicle, it was used as a test car for Porsche. As a result, the car was driven by a number of different people, and this could have allowed some of them to place a curse on it. Alexander also believes that the car may have been involved in some kind of accident during its testing, which could have caused it to become haunted. After all, 2 people died in the car while Dean owned it, and there were other accidents after that as well. There is also the possibility that James Dean himself was cursed. If this is true, then it would explain why he died in such a young age, and why his death caused such devastation. Some people believe that Dean's death was an omen, warning the world that something terrible was about to happen. For example, in the movie Rebel Without a Cause, Dean's character predicts that he will die in a car crash. Additionally, the movie was released shortly before Dean's death, and it seemed almost prophetic. So is there any truth to the legend of the curse? Unfortunately, probably not. While there are some strange coincidences surrounding James Dean's car, there is no hard evidence that anything supernatural is going on. It is much more likely that all of these deaths were simply a case of bad luck. That being said, it is important to remember that this is just a legend, and there are people who believe that James Dean's car really is cursed. What do you think? Is there any truth to the legend, or is it just a spooky story that has been made up? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And now for my final story of the day. I must warn you that this one hurts. If you can't handle the truth, then look away now. When you hear the word zombie, what comes to mind? Shambling corpse, flesh-eating monster, right? Well, what if I told you that zombies are real? That's right. These horrifying creatures aren't just found in horror movies, they walk among us every day. It all started when I was a child. I remember seeing a commercial for a local zoo. The ad featured a man in a gorilla suit shuffling around a cage. It looked fake. But when I visited the zoo with my family, I couldn't see any gorillas. I asked my dad what had happened to the animals, and he told me that they had all been turned into zombies. At first, I didn't understand what he meant. But then I saw the gorilla shuffling around its enclosure. It looked like it had been possessed by some kind of evil spirit. Since then, I have learned the truth about zombies. They are created when a person is infected with a virus. The virus takes control of their body and mind, turning them into a mindless slave. Now I see zombies everywhere. They are in our schools, workplaces, and even our homes. They are people who have lost their souls and become nothing more than flesh-eating monsters. But don't worry, I'm here to help you avoid the worst of them. Just stay away from crowded places, because that's where the zombies strike. Thank you for listening to my story. I'll go and hide because the zombies are coming.